Good morning. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking your seats now. We're about to start the business session, and once again, I would ask you kindly to set your cell phones on vibrate, please. Thank you. All right, we're going to start the initial business session here very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. So those of you who are still remaining, there are plenty of good seats here. Please come on and sit down. Now, to start the morning's business session off, I would invite the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Halifax Port Authority, Karen Oldfield, to join the podium, please. Okay.
Good morning. Nice to see everybody this morning, and I was quite energized by the Ambassador's remarks today, so I think we're going to follow up a great start with a great business session. My job here this morning, I have to admit, I've gotten off extremely lightly, which is basically to welcome all of the participants and then to welcome our panel. And I'm going to just make a couple of preliminary remarks about the panel, not the panelists. The one thing that we cannot do without is food. We can do without the TV. We can do without, can do without a cell phone. In my case, not too well, but there's a lot of things that we can do without. We cannot do without food. And one of the things that we do a great job of here in Atlantic Canada, as the Ambassador noted, but in Canada generally, we do a great job of producing food. In Atlantic, if you think about it, we do have Clearwater and many other lobster producers and harvesters. We have a great seafood market. We have those PEI oysters and mussels that are known around the world. We have the largest producer of wild blueberries in the world here in Nova Scotia at Oxford Foods, and many other fantastic producers of foodstuffs. So I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about how we can increase our global opportunities, what we're doing today, how we can do that better. We've assembled a great panel to help us to work through that. And to kick the panel off, I would like to introduce Mr. Stephen Wood, who is here from Toronto to help us moderate the panel. Stephen is a partner at Deloitte. He has a long history in the grocery and retail shipping sectors. And so, Stephen, over to you. And panelists, I hope we have a great morning here today. So thanks for coming and look forward to your remarks.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. My job is to bring out the insights and the lessons and all the great information for you guys from the panel that's been assembled. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to tee up some opening remarks. We're going to invite the panel up, and then we're going to really allow you to hear from them. And a couple of points for you to note here in the room. We're actually streaming this live across the internet. We've got people listening in from all over the world, which is quite exciting, very interesting. One other procedural note is that if time allows, toward the end of the session, there's some cards like this on seats around the room. And if you have a question that you'd like to pose for the panel, just fill out the question, and there'll be people going around at that time to collect the question, and we'll get it up here and get as many of those answered as we possibly can in the time that we have. So the theme is the global food value chain. And if we're talking about the food industry, and Karen teed it up for us, historically, with the exception of commodities, the food industry actually has not been all that global. It's tended to be regional, national, local. But we know that that's changing. And the reason that's changing is, like many other things, with the travel, with the sharing of information, with immigration, we're becoming a lot more connected to other markets, and that is having an impact on food as well. Preferences for food have become more varied, even in our market here, and you see that in many places in Canada. And one of the big drivers of the globalization of food is that increasingly retailers, the grocery retailers, the large global players, are moving from their traditional home markets around the world and increasingly into developing markets. What this has done is created a fundamental shift in the food industry from supply-driven to demand-driven, and that has significant implications on supply chain. And through the course of the panel this morning, I'm sure you'll hear a lot about that. If it's demand-driven, then the point of the demand is the consumer. And in anything related to the food industry, the point of departure for strategy and thinking about how best to succeed needs to start with the consumer. And boy, are things changing on that front. Today's consumer is interested in health and wellness related to food. Food safety is a big concern. We just heard from the Chinese ambassador in that market, in India, in other emerging economies where there's rapidly growing middle class. The diets are changing, and there's a much stronger demand for protein in the diet, which has implications for the entire supply chain. Consumers in the developed economies are concerned about convenience. With the economic conditions that we're in today, they're interested in value. And I would also say that consumers are interested in values, meaning sustainability is an issue, and that has implications and requirements on the supply chain. Animal welfare is an issue, and that gets to the notion of values and how consumers perceive your brand, because in a demand-driven world, it's all about brand. Deloitte does a food and beverage industry survey, and our results are quite interesting in that companies that are succeeding consistently in the food industry show some characteristics and some attributes that set them apart from the rest of the market. Of course, like many other industries, leveraging size and scale to drive profitability is something that's true in the global food industry as well. But those companies that are always at the top of our survey in terms of delivering profitability, there's two things that really stand out year after year in the survey. One is that they have a different capital structure than the rest of the industry. They've taken on more debt as a percent of their total capitalization. And what's interesting is when we look at what they're investing that additional capital in, it's not property, plant, and equipment. The food companies and the grocery retailers are relying on the other players in the supply chain to come to the table, to bring capability, to enable them to continue to drive size, growth, and profitability. And again, that has massive implications for the rest of the supply chain. What they are investing that money in is not inventory, not warehouses, not property, plant, and equipment. It is in capability, it's in acquisition, it's in transformational customer-focused brand building, innovation, those parts of the business that conform to the growth and market opportunities and the fact that the industry is becoming more demand-driven. So the so what of that is they are increasingly reliant on their partners that play other roles in the supply chain. They're getting out of that business and relying on many of you to help them do this. What that creates actually is supply chains competing against supply chains. And for that to work effectively, it requires a different level of collaboration, of visibility, and demand balancing in order for that system to work effectively and as intended. So I think we'll hear a lot about that through the course of the panel this morning, and those are themes that I think you can expect to hear. In terms of just teeing up, and I'll stop talking soon, and we'll get the panelists on the stage here. We do have a video that helps sort of bring this together and connect the various constituent parts when we talk about supply chain. You'll see that in the video. So if we could please tee up the video now. Thank you to the team at CN for that video that sets us up very nicely. And with that, I'd like to introduce the CN Chief Executive Officer, Claude Mongeau, to make some opening comments and to introduce the panelists for this morning. Claude?
Thank you, Stephen. There's nothing like a video. I would like a container of that Chateau Petrus. And I'm not picky on the shipping line as long as it all comes and it's not broken. Thank you, Karen, for kicking this off. You did get out lightly, but we're pleased that you've organized this event. It's a great opportunity to bring together all the stakeholders at the Port of Halifax, and that's the goal that we're trying to achieve with this particular panel. I'm pleased. I won't give you all of their achievements, but I will make you understand why they are on this panel and how we come together. We wanted to have a discussion around a theme, transportation through this gateway at Halifax, and it could have been the widget moving efficiently panel, but we decided to pick food. Why? Food, because it is becoming a hugely global supply chain. Food, because there's growth, sustainable growth, long-term ahead of us. And also food, because more than perhaps any other products, food has to move efficiently and reliably in order to meet ultimate customer demand. And that's what this gateway does best. So I'm pleased to invite with me on the panel basically 5 key leaders, unfortunately, or 4 in addition to me. Unfortunately, Heather Fettel from Maple Leaf Food had a transportation problem. Her aircraft did not make it, or she missed the plane yesterday, which tells you that sometimes hiccups happen in the transportation world, not just in the railroad industry. So with me, you got railroads, and you have to have shipping lines. And we have from Zim a new leader. She's an up-and-comer. I just met her for the first time, but I've been on the phone with her a couple of times, and I can tell you she's a mover and shaker, Leah Bokach. I also have 2 supply chain partners, and they are in between the railroad and the shipping line, and they are the representative and leaders of the 2 terminals that we have here in the harbor. And I was flying in yesterday with the sunset and saw the footprint. It's beautiful. We have Calvin Whitten from Ceres, and we have Ashley Dinning from Halterm. And we were supposed to have two, customers. We only have one, Phil Strott, but he's a good one. He's a great leader in their logistic supply chain at Loblaw. So panelists, come up and we'll have a good discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for the introductions. Good morning, panelists. So I teed up this notion that there's been a shift and the industry has become demand-driven. And so if we think about the pointy end, Phil, and the interface with the consumer and the customer, maybe the first question can be addressed to you, and we'll work back from that perspective. But I think there is good recognition that the industry is becoming more and more global. That involves challenges in and of itself, especially on the supply chain and logistics front. So the question to you is, what are the challenges that you and your organization are facing as the industry makes these shifts?
Okay. So thank you, and good morning, everyone. So in terms of challenges, I would say that we are looking at, as we globalize, we're looking at really a longer lead time for the product. And longer lead times, if we're not careful, drive safety stock and additional stock into the supply chain. So that's something that we can't live with. So certainly lead times are important. We are also using more and more systems to help us forecast, and those systems require us to really be consistent in execution. So if I think about what drives additional stock into a system, poor execution and lack of visibility of what's going on up the supply chain is a real issue for us. So the challenge for us is to make sure that we can execute and our partners can execute effectively, but also that we have visibility, because as Claude mentioned, things sometimes go wrong, and the more visibility we've got to those, the better that we can plan, and the better we can mitigate the impacts of that. So lead times, systems, and visibility. I think they're the key ones for us, because like I said, we're adding safety stock into a system and adding additional cost into the network is just not an option for us. Okay,
so that was very good and clear. So there's a dependence upstream, obviously, from the Loblaw's perspective and the food companies. So to those of you that are upstream, do you have a comment in response to what Phil just said around the requirements? Calvin?
I'm Calvin Whitten. I work for Ceres Corp. We're a container terminal operator here in Halifax and some additional ports in the U.S. Our terminal is in the Bedford Basin, and we're the interchange between the vessels, the rail, and the trucks. Our volume has gone up and down over the years. Last year we had approximately 150,000 containers on and off vessels, and each and every one of those are delivered or received from a truck or a rail car. I've been in this business here in the port for over 3 decades, and there's been a significant change in attitude to our customers and our supply chain partners, and that being CN, the truckers. It wasn't that many years ago we had enough equipment to work a ship. We'd have 5 or 6 or 7 ships a week, and when the ship was in, we didn't care what the truckers wanted. We shut it down, took the equipment away from them, and the railway, we didn't work. There's been a significant change over the years. Our previous owner, who has sold to NYK, a shipping line out of Tokyo, I was on the phone with him during that growth period, and I told him, I get this guy complaining about this, I get this guy complaining about that, the truckers want to be serviced faster, I'm not going to open the gate, I'm not going to do this. He said, just stop talking, tell me what equipment you need to be able to do it all at the same time. We embarked, that was probably around 2005, 2006, when we were handling almost 250,000 boxes a year. And our attitude changed. We started working with CN, and Claude also brought a change in attitude with CN. We started working together with us. And CN and our terminal, we work together every day. We don't exchange any revenues. Our customers are the common customer of the line. So we work with a partner, it's a significant partner, and the truckers are the same way. We don't exchange revenues with the truckers. We do the service for our shipping line. So we put the equipment in place. We went on a $40 million investment plan. Now, having said that, we're a private business. We don't want to spend money just to make it better for somebody else. Although we like blah, blah, we wouldn't do it just to make you happy. So on that path, we had to find a way to be a better line, bottom line for us. So through that process, we doubled our rail tracks. That enables us to work rail at the same time we're working a ship. We modernized our gate with OCR, optical recognition cameras. What used to take us 20 minutes to do 8 trucks at a shot, we do a truck now in less than 2 minutes. By the time his wheels stop moving, he picks up the telephone, he doesn't get out of his truck. We know the weight of the box, we know the number of the box, and we already had the booking electronically, so we basically spit a ticket out at the booth he's at, and that process is finished. We then process the outgoing move. Our truck turn times have gone from an hour and a half, that's gate in, gate out, to less than 30 minutes all the time. We release those numbers to the trucking companies, we release them to the shipping lines, and that's the transparency we're trying to get to. The railway, in those days, we had 7 and 8 days. We would hold a box captive for 7 or 8 days off a vessel onto the terminal before we'd actually load it to a rail car. The CN have actively taken a KPI measurement with us, trying to reduce that number, and supplying rail cars for us. I can tell you now we're less than 1.5 days on average, and when a vessel docks alongside, the majority of that cargo, more than 50% of that cargo, almost on every vessel, is leaving our dock on a rail car before the ship unties and leaves the dock. Those are the kind of things that we have to do to improve the speed and then show that down on our bottom line by efficiencies. Our crane, we put 2 new cranes in. Our crane production has gone from 21, 22 an hour to over 35 an hour. That goes to our bottom line, and it gets the ship back at sea and speed. We compete with New York. New York are our biggest competitor, not Montreal, it's New York. All our vessels are either coming from New York or going to New York, and all their connections are the same connections we have. So if we're not more efficient and cheaper, the box will come off in New York and not in Halifax. So we're cognizant of that, and so is our labor, and we're working towards those as an end goal.
So what I'm picking up from your comments, Calvin, are that there was a change in operating model and philosophy, much more customer-driven, and you've made the investments and the commitments to really follow through with that change in operating model and philosophy.
Absolutely no question, and the investments were not done just by us. The Port of Halifax was a significant partner in that investment and that modernization. So were the railways, and so were the government. The government stepped in with a couple of our truck projects for the modernization and security.
So we're seeing evidence then of that true supply chain partnership.
Absolutely, no question about it. Our KPIs, our measurements, our efficiencies have gone significantly better, and we are continuing to look at them. Do we need to step them back to improve our bottom line? But we're finding the further we take them, the better our bottom line becomes.
Fantastic. Leah, did you want to share a perspective from Zim?
Sure. I'm Leah Bogat Genosar. I know it's hard to pronounce, but it's nice because everyone presented it in a different way. So, but this is the right way. My husband complains as well. I'm sorry about that. So I think really our main motto for this is we need, and you mentioned it, Claude, we need sustainability, we need stability, and in that respect, it means that for continuing to grow the supply chain and to continue to grow the food supply and the global transportation, there needs to be a commitment from all the stakeholders that we saw before here in the movie. Because as Calvin said, and Claude probably will relate to, is that all the people, all these stakeholders invest in infrastructure, invest in equipment, and we as a shipping line, obviously, we invest in bigger ships, we invest in equipment, we invest in IT systems, and you know, it's not, let alone the fact that we are bringing hundreds of reefers to Canada, and then the capelin and the mackerel decide to lay their eggs in Norway, so then what can we do? I mean, we are staying here with the containers, and then we will have to send them back. So actually there is also within the shipping line, there is an internal fight, I would say, on the resources. Everyone wants the reefers, and obviously me as heading the North America part, I would like to get the resources here and the reefers here, and as a result I would need my partners to actually to put their share in the game. I heard you, Phil, that you said about the lead times and the visibility. I think you're very correct. I think the lead time is something very important, and but I think what is more important is the regularity, because the lead time, we got to a point that we said, okay, we need to get the ship as fast as possible. So maybe we cut down on ports and we're speeding up the vessel, but the consumption, the fuel consumption of the vessel is growing exponentially. So obviously you saw that the shipping lines got to a point that said, okay, we are going, and I'm sure customers don't like the terminology slow steaming. However, I can tell you that it could be a difference of $100,000 a day. And as a result, we have to think about the regularity, to know that when we come, a certain day of a week, every week, and to arrange the supply chain accordingly.
And can I just, because I absolutely agree with you, the consistency is actually more important than lead time. So it's, so long as it'll drive, if you have an inconsistent delivery, then it'll actually drive more safety stock into the system. That's what our systems will do. They find that very hard to forecast, and then we put that wobble through the whole supply chain. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And by the way, sometimes when customers come to me and they tell you, no, your competitor X or Y, they have a much faster transit time. I said, yes, but then you have to pay them faster. So at least with us, you can pay a little bit longer. So, you know, there are some advantages also to that. But regarding the visibility, you know, also this has been huge improvements in the last years. And I think today it's amazing to see that everybody speaks the same language, because if you're talking about EDI, if you talk about the EDI transmission, the 305, the 310, and don't ask me which is which because I don't remember, you will see that we all speak the same language, and we transmit from the terminal in the loading port, transmit to the shipping line. The shipping line has to transmit it, obviously I'm talking about the import to North America, we transmit it to the terminal, we transmit it to the rail, then from the rail the customers have all the time the visibility to see at any given time where their container is, and I'm sure these things will further improve when obviously each customer will have their password to get into the website of the shipping line and the railroad and see exactly what they need. So really, for me, I think that obviously in transportation, things go wrong. And you know, I live in Norfolk, and I know already that in order to get to a place, I need to take maybe 2 days fare, because otherwise I will never get there. Otherwise, I get to the transshipment port, and then I have to drive back to Norfolk. This is usually what happens. So there are problems. Obviously, there are problems all the time, but I think that one of our main things in team is when we say global reach and local touch, we say that, yes, we know there are problems, but we are here to solve them, and there is accessibility to each one of us. My business card has my cell phone number, and you know, we are here to solve problems also if needed.
That's great, Leah. The thing that again is jumping out for me is the notion of optimizing across your own individual pieces, not optimizing within and then getting to a potentially suboptimal outcome. So the notion of going a little slower to take more cost out and providing reliability is an example of the supply chain working in totality for a better result for the end customer, which is fantastic. Ashley, maybe we can turn it over to you. Halterm's making some great investments, and there's lots of exciting news. Can you talk about the role that you and your organization are playing in this whole picture?
Sure. Look, this business, shipping and terminals business, is hugely dependent on critical mass, volume. We need volume, both shipping lines, our direct customers, and terminals. Halterm and Ceres alike, we need volume here. To run a terminal and a shipping line, it requires huge capital commitment. Ship-to-shore cranes, terminal equipment, land rent. Larger and larger ships today are rolling out of the shipyards. The reality is Nova Scotia has a population of roughly around 1 million people. We have approximately 1% GDP. So real growth is going to come from a change in attitude and change to well-entrenched paradigms. And by that I mean moving cargo away from traditional locations like New York that are feeding cargo into the Midwest, and land bridging that cargo into Chicago and Detroit and Minneapolis. And by working collectively with end customers and with partners such as CN and our shipping lines, that's where the real volume is going to come. With these additional volumes, terminals and shipping lines can generate the critical mass that's needed. There's no doubt about it. This in turn will allow us collectively to reinvest in the facilities by purchasing more and more superstructure that's required in the terminals, more cranes, developing local talent, developing more jobs in the community. With a shift away from the traditional supply chain arteries such as New York that are essentially clogging up every day, and switching that cargo away from New York that's bound for the Chicagos, the Detroits, the Minneapolises, and moving it through Halifax, you can start to take the cost out of the business that Phil was alluding to. Because here in Halifax, across both terminals, we measure our dwell time, and by that I mean how long it takes a container to get onto a train and into its end markets. We measure the dwell time in this part of the world in hours, and usually in single digits. And you talk to our customers around the world, and they've had enough of having to discharge cargo in New York and wait 3, 4, 5 days before they actually get loaded onto a train. Where here in Halifax, certainly at Halterm, and I'm sure that Calvin can talk to his own terminal, but at Halterm, it's usually within 9 hours a train is departing, 9, 10 hours a train is departing with the cargo bound for the inland hinterlands, and the ship is still at the berth. Approximately 70% of our business is being discharged straight from the ship and loaded straight onto the train. So we can take cost out of the business, Phil, by actually getting your product into the market, servicing your just-in-time requirements, eliminating your safety stock, or at least reducing it significantly, safety stock, by taking these paradigm changes along the way. At Halterm, even just this year, I'm talking about visibility, we implemented a new terminal operating system this year that gives greater visibility to our important customers like Zim, our partners, our land transport partners such as CN, and our road transport partners as well. And so they've got access into our system. They can see where their container is through our system. So we agree that the greater and greater visibility is what's required collectively across us all here to ensure that we continue to drive efficiencies and costs out of the business. We have invested in people also at Halterm. We have recruited a lot of world-class salespeople that have come in from terminals all around the world. And with these people, they're working with end customers, they're working with the shipping lines, they're working with CN to look at how we actually drive these efficiencies and how we can actually influence this paradigm change that's required. And most of the you could say the cargo owners that are moving cargo through New York into these into the Midwest area. I guess today they have an attitude that if it's not broken, don't fix it. However, we can see that it is broken, that by changing that paradigm move, bringing the cargo through Halifax, they indeed can get their product and drive down safety stock, as you refer, Phil, in their markets. So these are just some of the things that Halterm are doing and working with our partners and our customers.
It's interesting to hear the reflection on KPIs that we've heard from a number of the panelists. And it's not necessarily just a KPI that's specific to their business. We're hearing about KPIs that are important to the supply chain in total. We've heard dwell time, we've heard safety stock. To me, what that indicates is a desire to be performance-driven. So it's demand-based and performance-driven, and that creates alignment, goal alignment, that creates accountability and visibility, which is fantastic. Leah, any reaction to what you just heard?
I think if we talk about the KPIs, again, it's something that now has been changing lately, and actually we are now in a world where everybody does their own KPIs and everybody measures their KPIs compared to their customers, but also compared to their vendors, suppliers, and other partners, which is very interesting. I think CN has been a pioneer in that, and actually in providing us how they see themselves as serving ZIM, but how ZIM is for them as a customer, which is very interesting because we see it not only as as kind of a score, but actually as really as marking the way for improvement. And obviously, we developed actually only in the last year a very extensive KPI system, and everybody is part of it. And it's something that I'm sharing it with all my team here in North America, and we're actually trying to fix it. And this is mainly in terms of serving the customers. How long does it take us to give a rate quote? How long does it take us to give a booking confirmation? How long does it take? Actually, the on-time delivery is a very crucial part of this KPI. But also, we try to measure how long containers stay at customers' premises before they come back, because apparently some customers, they want the cargo to arrive fast, but once the cargo arrives, they would ask for 23 days.
I'm sure.
And then you don't understand why. Never happen. No. Exactly. So I'm saying, I think really adjusting something a little bit about adjusting expectations, and actually it's okay that I do it now. I have to get it over.
Absolutely.
With. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I'll do it now. So it's something about adjusting expectations and what we discussed before, Phil, and just reminded me of a little joke, and hopefully there is nobody from human resources here. So this lady, she tells her husband, honey, listen, why don't we do it like the Olympics? So he said, what do you mean? Better, faster, longer? She says, no, every 4 years. It went well.
I didn't see that in the script here anywhere.
I told you.
That's a KPI that, I think someone needs to give some more thought to that. But anyway.
And I do apologize for the people in the WebEx. So.
No, I'm sure they're all live now.
That's right. Claude, it's clear that Ceres and Halterm are making investments and creating infrastructure and capacity. Can you comment on what CN is doing to help the industry and basically the port and all the infrastructure and the supply chain take advantage of that?
Yes, absolutely. My view of things is that, as we said, the food supply chain, but it's true of every other supply chain, but because it's food, the food supply chain becoming more global. But nimbleness, how fast can we get together to react to opportunities is critical. And it's our belief at CN that in order to get nimbleness, in order to get efficiency and consistency and reliability, we have to come together in a different way. And process innovation, visibility, capability to act as an end-to-end supply chain is critical. So That's what we've been trying to achieve over the last couple of years. I'm pleased that the Port of Halifax, for instance, was the first port that we had a framework supply chain collaboration agreement with. That led to agreements with both terminals in terms of creating an ecosystem of collaboration on a day-to-day basis, exchanging information, giving visibility to what's happening. That has expanded to a capability at CN to offer our shipping line partners information, not about just Halifax, but all of the other ports that we serve for them, because what happened in Halifax spread across the country. We now have supply chain collaboration agreements with all the ports we serve in Canada and all the terminal operators. And it's giving us an ability, I think, to get better end-to-end dwell time, to get better tactical planning, to get better asset utilization. Asset utilization is service and cost efficiency.
Yeah.
But it's truly when we get measures that bring us together as opposed to each of us with a silo measure that we can get to the next level. And I see a lot of good examples here in Halifax.
Thank you. So what I think, again, is quite consistent in terms of starting with an attitude and a mindset around working together and collaborating, creating the operating models and the agreements and the frameworks to do that, and then having the infrastructure in place to enable it. And I have to applaud the group in terms of, there's clearly long-term strategic thinking going on here and being put in place, which is fantastic. And Calvin, the comment about the more we invest, the better results we get are really a very powerful testament to that strategy working. It's fantastic. Phil, if we go back to the pointy end and the dependence, I used to be in the Army, and that's what we used to say, like to be at the pointy end. So
that's how I know which way a boat's going. So I understand it.
Good. So it's got applicability in a range of different contexts. Claude spoke about nimbleness. Clearly, there's an interdependence among the players. The way this has come together. With you being sort of the originator of the demand, what avenues are available? What can you do at your place in the supply chain to help try to create the reliability, the consistency, some sort of balance in how this chain has to react and respond?
Certainly. I will answer that question, but before I do, I also want to pick up on something that Claude said. And it goes back to that visibility. The other thing that is crucial for our customer is the food safety. And you talk about protecting our brand, but protecting us all. So again, that visibility in the supply chain, we need it not just to know, drive out cost and drive out the stock, but in the event of an issue, we absolutely have to understand all points along the supply chain where it's broken down. Because at the end of the day, the customer doesn't care if they've got bad product. They don't care if Loblaws did it on their shelf or whether it was a CN or whoever else. It doesn't really matter. We just have to be able to identify it, and we're all invested in putting that right, because we've got the customer to satisfy at the end of the day. So I thought that was an important point about the visibility that you made there. In terms of what we can do, we're already doing it, and we're seeing more and more of it with our joint business planning. And I think everybody here has talked about how it's no longer good enough just to look at what you do in your own operation. You've got to be able to share information. You've got to be able to share. I've got to understand if there are things that I'm doing that drive an issue into, like I'm holding up containers. Not that we would ever do that. That must be somebody else you're talking about. But
we'll get the KPIs there.
Well, I don't want to tell you what happened to containers with potatoes that go to Venezuela, and after 1 year, they were still there.
Well, they're now seed potatoes, is that right? But the point is that we all have, we're only going to improve it, and we have an opportunity, and we talked about paradigm shift, we have an opportunity to do that if we can collaborate and share that information together. So, you know, we laugh about it, we joke about the things, but, you know, I absolutely know that there are things that we would do that drive, you know, inefficiency and cost into, you know, into a supply chain, and that's stuff that we need to be able to have that conversation around. And likewise, you know, there are things that everybody in that chain can improve upon, and we can do it quicker and better if we work together to do that. And I see that happening in our business today. We have joint business planning meetings. We work with Claude. We work with your team, you know, at CN to improve, you know, the speed and the supply chain and that sort of thing. When sometimes we're just throwing stuff against the wall to say, look, you know, here's an issue. What do you see? And you can bring things from different industries and different experience. And the more we can do that, you know, the better. We all win at the end of the day.
So along those lines, and to build on that, Phil, we've talked about the broader strategic, longer-term commitments, investments, operating models. Maybe we could sort of dial it down a little closer in and say, okay, so visibility, collaboration, striving for balance. How do we affect that on more of a day-to-day basis? What decisions are being made? What actions are being taken? What are you doing more from a tactical perspective, I would say, to make this happen day to day? And maybe, Claude, we could start with you.
Well, let's talk about balance. Halifax as a gateway is blessed. We have very good balance, and it's critical to keep it that way because we need throughput and we need it in both directions. And the shipping lines, in terms of round trip cost, if they get a container inland and have to reposition it back to the coast and with no loads, I mean, it's a dead move and it's a cost as opposed to a revenue opportunity. So the kind of supply chain collaboration mindset that we have brought to the table or are trying hard to get better at CN is to be nimble and to focus on balance opportunity. I'll give you a good example. We work our overseas and our domestic services at CN, and we try to bring them together. The boxes of our shipping line partners, when they are empty in the countryside, are opportunities for us on the retail domestic to serve our customers and use those boxes to go back towards the coast. We look at source loading of products inland and look at opportunities to bring traffic into Halifax for export load. We've worked with Zim, for instance, at looking at some of the empty containers that are in New York. You know, could we bring some of that capacity for pulp that we would bring from Quebec and Ontario towards Halifax to achieve balance? The tactical planning, the supply chain collaboration, the nimbleness is helping us achieve business goals, not just from a service standpoint, but also from a bottom line and throughput. And it's critical. I mean, it's difficult in the shipping line industry. Yeah. It's you know, very tough competition in the case of terminals. And for railroads, Halifax is a long distance to market, so we got to be efficient. If we don't have volume and throughput in both directions, it's tough to make a buck at the end of the day. And I'm convinced that how we come together, keeping an eye on the ultimate customer, is true supply chain collaboration.
Just before we go to some other comments on that question, I would just like to say it looks like we may have time to take some questions from the audience. So if you're interested, grab one of the cards that are around, write down your question, and there'll be people going around that will collect them and bring them up to me, and I'll select some questions for the panel. Okay? So back to the question, Leah.
There is a lot to say, and every time when somebody says it reminds me of another challenge and another issue that we're dealing with, but I would like to refer to really few things that you mentioned, Claude. You know, in the shipping business, if we're talking about the Pacific trade, for example, a full vessel would come from Asia to North America with, say, 4,500 TEUs. The same vessel, when she takes full TEUs, can go back to Asia maybe in a good time with 2,700 TEUs. meaning that the inefficiency is built in because of the type of the commodity, because of the type of, obviously because of the weight. So we are trying to make some economies on that, and obviously get lighter containers, or decide that we are limiting the amount of the containers, of the full containers, and taking empty containers. Again, just to give you an example, the team is very committed to the port of Halifax, and obviously they can attest to that. When we had our challenge coming with our vessels coming from the Med and going all the way to Jamaica, we realized that we cannot, when the vessels come to Canada, to Halifax, they discharge much less than they can load. And we used to do all our transshipment cargo from the Med to the Caribbean and Central America. We used to do that in Kingston, Jamaica. However, obviously, we could not serve the market here properly, so we thought about a solution, and we came to a conclusion with a big assistance from Halterm and the big assistance with the Port of Halifax, and we actually changed our operating model, and we changed all our transshipment to Jamaica. Actually, we did it in Halifax. So obviously, it's a lot more work to Halifax, and the numbers speak for themselves. But we enabled our vessels to have more capacity sailing out of Halifax. So whoever is interested, yes, we have the space. And one important thing that I think that food is very dynamic, and the supply chain is very dynamic. So if a certain market realizes that the cost to bring food from one place would be cheaper, they would move. They would move their needs from other places, and you know, you can serve the citrus from South America, and you can serve them from Israel, from California. So the trade will shift. So it's very important for all of us sitting here to understand that we need to work together to keep it coming this route, and we will continue to get the Asia connection, and we will continue to get the Mediterranean connection, and to keep the markets and the cargo coming from here, in this trade route, and rather than enabling them somebody to come, let's say, from South America. And I think for that matter, since it's a seasonal business, I think forecasts are very important. Because reefers move, I'm sorry, I'm going all the time back to reefers, but because this is a very crucial thing in the supply chain, reefers would move to the place of where they're needed. So when there is a huge citrus season in the Med, a lot of reefers go there. So we need to ensure that the reefers that are working here will keep on going. So if we have this iron stock, we can keep it. And I think forecasts are very important, because all the vessel is geared to it. And you have to understand, once a vessel sailed, obviously the same with the train, the vessel sailed, sail slots are gone. They're not coming back. And we have to make the best out of it. And I think with good forecasting, and obviously I would kindly ask the help of you and obviously the other shippers, good forecasting is going to dramatically improve the efficiency and our ability to serve the customers much better.
Yeah. Interesting. So a slot is a perishable capacity.
Yeah. And indeed, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So why don't I just, because you talked about reefers, Leah, there's some questions from the audience that segue nicely from that. And Ashley and Calvin, perhaps you guys could talk about the Port of Halifax and the roles that you guys play, and just more broadly around Halifax being a center of excellence in handling reefers. What more can be done? And then a follow-on question, Claude, is does CN plan to continue to expand its reefer services in Canada?
Yeah, as far as reefer traffic is concerned, it's business that we enjoy at the terminal. There's a lot of work around a reefer. You're prepared before you send it out for a load. You obviously have to protect it when it comes back. You supply the electricity, you move it, you take the genset that's used to cool the reefer on a truck. You take that off, you plug it into the hard wiring into the terminal. So reefer traffic is a good revenue generator for our terminal, and it's good revenue generators for the shipping line, so it's good cargo. At our terminal, we had about 298 receptacles on our terminal, and during our expansion project, we've taken that to 500. And in that process, we also made it available with conduits, transformers capability, and the design of our racks to go another 100 by pulling wires and putting racks up, so we can expand further. During the peak season of reefers, our terminal is just buzzing with reefers. We can be moving around 200 empty reefers a day just on the terminal, moving it over here to get it ready, move it over on the truck. And as recently as last week, we had meetings with one of our prime customers talking about how they can reduce the number of gensets they use and how we can move the genset from a return load faster to another load to get it out the gate. And they hear reduce their cost, I hear another revenue generating opportunity.
Win-win.
Yeah, so my final comment would be to touch what Leah said and take a risk of talking about the Olympics again. I see the connection between the vessels and us and the railway and the truckers. I'll put them in one group. I see that as a baton race. And our terminal is kind of simple. We just move boxes around. That's all we do. These guys have all the work. We just move simple boxes around the terminal. I see us as the relay passers, the baton passer. And no disrespect to the group, but we all work on our own business, and me included. We work on our own business, and we don't focus enough on the baton passing here to the trucker, to the shipping line, to the railway. And I think, going forward, that's one spot we could work on. So my reference to Olympics was okay?
Oh, yeah. We're good. We're good.
Not
Ashley?
quite as entertaining as...
Afterwards, we have to understand why everybody laughed so much, It was so interesting.
Likewise at Halterm, we have similar capacity to what Kelvin just mentioned there, with the ability to expand. We've got the racks in place to expand our existing capacity. It just needs to be wired up when the demand is there. It's an important market segment for us to deal with. We have some key customers at the port, at the terminal, that we need to ensure that we handle their valuable cargo efficiently and effectively. At Halterm, we also have a very important customer named OceanX, and they service the Newfoundland market. And so that, again, they're the conduit and the link to our other valued international shipping lines that are bringing that reefer cargo from Newfoundland and Labrador into Halterm and transshipping it on to services such as Leah services in our terminal. We also have other customers that we are working with now that are getting smarter and smarter with their reefer designs. One of our key customers that we've got many years of experience with are now designing and introducing reefer containers into the market that's remote monitoring. And so we're doing our bit in terms of taking cost out of the entire supply chain by, hey, if we don't need to have people monitoring the containers, if they don't need to have people monitoring containers and they can do that from a central location, we're supportive of doing that. And again, it's taking cost out of the system for them. So it is a key market for us. We service it. We do it very well. And we are recognised for it.
Great, thank you. An interesting question here. If we buy into the notion that it's about the consumer and it's demand driven, there is a movement within, we're calling this the global food value chain for a good reason. However, there is a segment of the consumer demographic that increasingly want food sourced locally. So the question is, how does this local food movement impact your business? Is it of a size that you're seeing any impact? Do you have any thoughts on where that might take the industry?
I would think this is something quite, it has a limitation, because I remember when I was a child in Israel, so we could only eat oranges in the winter, and we could eat nectarines in the summer, and and now the world is not like this. Now you want to eat an orange now. It doesn't matter if it's summer or winter. And I think that when you are looking at regional growth and domestic growth, you have to take into account that it cannot supply anything. Obviously, the weather is very much has a big influence on that.
That's why sourcing and nimbleness matters, because if Loblaws wants to have those oranges or those nectarines all year round, the flows are going to be moving over time, and we got to be nimble if we want to a higher share of that trade in our gateways. If I could just add a comment on the reefer business, this is an area where CN really also tried to change its paradigm. It's the best example where process and capability innovation can make a difference. We frankly at CN, we used to treat reefers a little bit like just any container, and sometimes in the worst of days just more complicated containers. You know, there are problems, we gotta check them, etc. But when you look at it, it's a good business to have. It's a cool cargo, and you gotta step up and have capabilities to be able to do it well end to end. Because if there is a breakdown in the equipment at any point in the journey, you got a problem with the shrimps, or you got a problem with the food that you're moving in terms of ultimate value, or even whether it's going to be sellable at the end of the day. So we've revamped our reefer capability. We are trying to get to the new modern technology of detection at all times. We're trying to use not just technology but also support. We've reorganized our customer service desks around a reefer desk, because we figure it's that kind of a different business. It requires specialists. We're innovating. We've always had good gen sets to go across Canada. They're very effective, they're very dependable, there's redundancy, they can be cost effective, but we're trying to innovate and introduce trans-border services with clip-ons as opposed to gen set. Eventually we hope there's going to be enough volume that we can have gen sets going into the US, and it's about taking ultimately an outside-in perspective. What does it take to win the day in the reefer trade, sweating the details? And that's what we're doing, and it's working. And Halifax is just a great gateway for that cool cargo.
Thank you, Claude. Phil, interested in your perspective on impacts from the local food movement, notwithstanding the comments that you made around, there's a desire on the part of consumers to have everything all year round too.
Yeah, so I think really done a great job at answering the question that I thought I was going to get, so that's good. Thank you. I would say to you that I think I agree with you entirely that there's the demand now for food all year round. The customer doesn't respect seasonality. They want strawberries when they want strawberries, not when they're being harvested. But the movement and sustainability, and the whole sustainability movement is growing, and is not going to shrink. So it's just going to become a bigger and bigger demand. So I think what we're seeing, and we do it ourselves. We have we support local growers, and we do local lots of, but that's during the season. That's during the time when it's available, and you're not going to grow too many bananas in Western Canada at ever, really. It's
global warming.
Yeah, shouldn't say ever. So there we go. But it's interesting that even that question, we end up talking about the sharing data and sharing the forecast, because as you two are talking, I'm sitting there thinking, well, we have good forecasts of if I look at bananas, I'd use that as the example. They're easy. We move about 150 containers a week of bananas, week in, week out. Very easy to predict. You actually probably have as much visibility as you would need, because you can just look at the volume and see it doesn't change. But clementines, mandarins, 800 containers, doesn't sound like a lot, but it comes in 8 weeks. That's it. That's the seasonal piece. And that's stuff that we know, because we know when we're going to put it on ad, we know when we're going to sell it. So we could share that information very easily with sort of upstream to the suppliers to make sure that we get the supply, because there's no downside in that for us. It's just all upside, because we can help we can help you successfully service us, in which case then we serve our customer better. So it's interesting.
Okay, well, we've had fantastic conversation. There were a number of other very interesting questions. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time, and we're not going to be able to get those questions addressed in the panel format. I'm sure the panelists would be interested in carrying on the conversation. if you'd like to follow up. But at this point, I'd like to invite Claude just to provide some wrap-up comments. And Claude, over to you.
Well, thank you, and thank you, panelists, for sharing the stage. I mean, it's not easy to make a point with slides or concepts. It's not easy to get that point across to an audience and stream it all over the world. But it's a lot more effective when the actual partners are all on the same table and or on the same stage, sharing their point of view and exchanging like we just did. There's no better testament to supply chain collaboration. There's no better testament to our willingness together to invest in the opportunity to grow. We each need to cover our backs because it's a tough world out there. We all need to make money, and we all need to be able to meet our ultimate requirements to be able to reinvest in the future. So if we can continue to maintain that ecosystem of collaboration, of tactical planning, of nimbleness, there is no better recipe to win in a competitive marketplace and get more volume through Halifax and do it properly for our customers. And I thank you for the business. I thank you for showing up, and I'm convinced we have a bright future ahead of us.
Thank you.